Yeah, I got 15 to 20 minutes as long as you need. So,
Thanks.
and I got one at 10 to 11:20. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Hey, is this Danny?
Hey, Justin, Danny Shirley, how you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How about yourself?
I'm having a great day.
That is wonderful to hear. That is exceptional. I'm going to jump right in because I know you're a busy man. I want to mention at the top of the interview you have a album coming out. Let's discuss it.
Yes, sir. Love to. Lucky to be alive.
Very cool. What can you share with readers of the Rowdy about the album?
Well, we've got 11 new songs on there that haven't been heard before, and we thought that was going to be the album. Then we had the idea to go back and recut "Trashy Women" with some guest stars on it, and give all the proceeds to charity. And so that we're real excited about that, and ended up getting a deal with Sony on this record. So things couldn't be better.
Really? So this came at the benefit of a few parties, not only yourself, but a charitable effort. Let's jump into that for a second. Trashy Women goes to help a charity in what area? Is it a local? Is it a local?
It is local. It's called the Hunter Worley Foundation, and a buddy of mine. I didn't know the family when this happened, but since then I've got to know him and his parents and everybody. About 10 years ago, he was on his backhoe and didn't realize his 4-year-old son had come outside and backed over him and killed him.
Oh, no.
And, I can't think of anything worse that could happen to a person. And we started a foundation a few years ago in this little boy's name. And there in my hometown of Chattanooga, if somebody suffers a loss of a child, we go in and try to help financially. We have clergy and therapists that work with the families and deals with funeral homes and stuff, and we, try to help these people at obviously the lowest point of their life. And I thought, well, we're going to do this new album anyway. Let's do this remake on here, and try to do something with the foundation.
Gotcha. No, and no, that comes from a tragic story. That's wonderful to hear that you're doing something to help people at the, as you said, at the lowest point of their lives, because there's nothing more awful or horrific or tragic than to lose a young child. So I without blowing smoke, I definitely want to thank you for doing that, because I think that's a wonderful cause and not just a puff cause to save the dolphins or something that people normally go
Well,
after.
thank you. Yeah, it's really been something being involved in this. You don't realize how often something happens to these kids. You're involved in it, and it's like every other week we're bearing another child, and obviously every story is heartbreaking, And one of the cool things about it, though, is that a lot of these families that we've helped get through this, they've come back and become part of the foundation. And then when it happens to somebody else, thank God I can't sit down with somebody and tell them I know what you feel like because you've lost your kid. But these people can. And it's really seemed to help these families work their way through it. And it's really been something to be a part of.
Okay, so through
Thank you.
Yeah, through putting people through this program, you're able to do a sort of a not team building, that's the wrong term, but you're able to have people network and care for one another through crisis counseling, it sounds like.
Well, it's the people are doing the Christian thing. They're trying to help their neighbors.
Sure.
That's the whole deal.
Sure. And you, going back to Trashy Women for a minute, this new cut of this album you said has some guests on it?
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't want to just recut it just with us, because that's been done. We had great success with it, sold millions of copies. But we thought, well, let's get some other people to sing on here with me. So I did the choruses, and John Henderson did the first verse. Willie Nelson did the second verse, which was the coolest thing ever. And then our buddy Colt Ford did the third verse. So that really spans a wide range of listeners and generations there. And it just turned out great. It's so much fun to make. And I'm so appreciative of these guys for being so gracious to lend their talents and their time to this project.
No, for sure. That's exceptional. It sounds like it's, as you said, it's spanning generations of listeners, so they can each adhere to their cadre of trashy women.
There you go. Trashy women from 18 to 80.
That's exceptional. So on this album, I was actually reading some of the notes. Something you released, you said something to the effect of, "You don't want to get older and dumber. That would be terrible." Well, no, I think that's a fascinating concept because with art, people do talk about the fear of diminished returns. You hear a lot of people on the subject of motion pictures. People say, well, Quentin Tarantino still makes great films. I wish M. Night Shyamalan or Steven Spielberg or someone else would be making those caliber of films. Is the fear of diminishing returns something that a lot of artists worry about? Is it something that has just bugged you in particular, or is it something that is a constant, ongoing problem you have in art to not repeat yourself? And specifically, how do you combat that as well?
Well, Justin, I hate to say it, but I'm not that deep. I was just, now that you mentioned, though, it's got it on my mind. Yeah, I guess you do worry about that, that, the older you get, you should be better at things. And, but I don't know as far as the art goes and the music and all. I've always, when I put together an album, I always just put out things I like.
Sure.
And, I like things, I'm sure, at 30 that I'm not, don't like as much at 60, and so I've never really thought about it that much. I just do what I like to do, and I'm just grateful that people have, still come to shows and still the music's held up this long. I do think on this new album, I have a lot of pride. I'm very proud of this new album. I think it'll hold up to some of the older stuff. But I never really thought about it till you just mentioned that in this conversation. So that'll give me something else to worry about at night when I'm trying to sleep now.
You'll have to avoid that and the psycho bitch that's stalking you is the. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
Kill your family.
You on the thread of topic, you had shared that this comes at a greater deal of wisdom you've acquired over the decades. I wanted to ask if there were any particular life experiences that adjusted your perspective and gave you that wisdom, that helped you mature. Is there anything?
Oh, just learning to ride out the ups and downs of life in general. Everybody has good days and bad days. Every career has good days and bad days. And I think just the acceptance of that and understanding that it's going to happen. If things are bad today, tomorrow might be better. But I'm also bad about if I'm on a streak of a lot of good things happening, I get thinking, man, what's coming? Something's around the corner is going to knock me down. But I think that's just growing older and wiser and being more understanding of not only your own life, but on what happens to other people's lives.
No, I got you. One thing of note that I definitely want to talk about that does affect the album but isn't limited to the album itself. Confederate Railroad has seen something of a evolving lineup over the years, and I wanted to ask how that's not only affected the sound, but how you were able to manage the authenticity of the band dealing with so many personnel changes.
Well, you get looking back, I've had the same drummer now for 35 years. I've had the same bass player for almost 30 years. Rusty, our guitar player, me and him have been playing music together off and on for well over 30 years. And that's real unusual in this business. We've had a couple of changes. Our steel player, Gates Nichols, passed away about 7 years ago. And then we got Bobby Randall playing steel guitar, who was original founding member of this band, Sawyer Brown. So, that added a little something different to it. And, for the most part, we've been real lucky in keeping people together. And it's really unusual in this business to stay playing music with the same people for, 30, 35 years.
On that note,
I think as we have had a change here and there, it kind of put a little spark back into things. A little different angle, a different perspective, a little different way of doing the songs, and I think it's worked well for us as far as keeping the music fresh.
So you think that change isn't necessarily a bad thing for some of these lineups because you've been able to find the ideal personnel, it sounds like. You think that you would encourage other artists out there to try to find the best collaborators they can?
Well, I wouldn't encourage them to hire the people that's been with them for years, but I think obviously you can withstand a change in the lineup, and sometimes it can be a good thing if you find the right person. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. You have been pretty influential to a lot of artists. From what I've gleaned, I wanted to talk to you about whom you've seen over the years that's come to you either backstage or through social media or through other avenues to address the effect your music has had on them, much in the same way that people were able to give you sort of an artistic leg up.
Well, there have been over the years several of the new artists that have come to me and saying that they've grew up listening to it, or Jason Aldean. He told me that I used to play his hometown in Macon, Georgia, every winter at a big club there, and he said him and his buddies were too young to get in, so they'd come stand outside the back door to listen to the show, and that was real humbling to me. Um, Luke Bryan said that he said, if you only knew how many times I've been sitting on the riverbank as a kid listening to Confederate Railroad records. So yeah, it is very humbling and very rewarding. I remember when I went to Waylon and told him, after I got to know him, I said, you're what made me a country music fan. I remember it meant a lot to Waylon. He told me, and I've had songwriters come up that said, you're the reason I got into country music, and it's kind of mind-boggling sometimes. You don't realize that people have really been affected that much by what you've done until these guys come and tell you, and it can kind of take you back a little bit.
Is it fair to say that there's a little bit of outlaw country in every iteration of country then, on that note? I mean, that there's a little bit of Confederate Railroad or Johnny Paycheck or David Allan Coe himself? Because that's kind of what I'm getting.
I think so. I think that, of course, the whole outlaw thing, it's not about doing drugs or cussing on stage or anything. It's
sure.
about doing things your own way, which is sometimes outside the normal, accepted way of doing things. To me, that's what an outlaw was being all about. Waylon came in and made records his way that had never been done before. Of course, the years I worked with Coe and Paycheck, Lord knows they broke rules and did it different, did it their way. And I think you'll always have that in country music, you have a lot of people that do it the way that everybody else is doing, but then you'll have one guy break out that's doing it totally different. And to me, that's what the whole outlaw thing is.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask, lastly, where you felt Confederate Railroad fit into the future of country music as a whole, where you see the band further experimenting or further collaborating with other artists. Because I know you've got a tour coming up, so I always have to ask the token question: what's down the pike for you?
Well, of course, we've always toured a lot. We still do 100, 120 dates a year. And as far as touring to support the album, really the only thing that means is we start keep doing the shows we're doing and add a couple songs off the new album, some of the songs. I did enjoy on this album doing things a little different. We never intended to make this record. We, these young guys coming to me, and I went to some songwriter buddies of mine, Blue Miller and Sonny Lemaire, and I said, these guys have been coming to me saying they grew up listening to us, big fans, said we should write something and maybe pitch to these guys, which is something I'd never done. And we started working on this, on the writing, and lo and behold, it started sounding like a Confederate Railroad record. And since we did start writing and weren't writing for it to be a Confederate Railroad record, we did write a couple of things that are different than the old records. I always tend to stay away on the old albums from love songs, because everybody does those. But in writing this new stuff, we did do a couple of those. I even, for my own enjoyment, really wrote a bluegrass tune and ended up putting it on the record. And I've really enjoyed, now that it did become an album and it is coming out, I'm really enjoying the differences in this than the old Confederate Railroad music. And I say different, but 80% of it's pure Confederate Railroad. But I did enjoy stretching out a little bit and doing some different things. And I think that down the road we'll end up doing another record and maybe stretching out and trying something else.
That's interesting.
But I think any album, if you listen to it of ours, from now on, is still, you're going to get that still Confederate Railroad attitude and sense of humor and everything. And so we won't stretch out too far to where people don't recognize it.
Sure. But that's a very interesting notion you just shared, is the fact that you were able to show up as a component of Confederate Railroad, but without the label you were able to find. Is it fair to say you were able to find another piece of the band of the sound Confederate Railroad that you would not have found had you put aside that label for a minute? Had you taken off that hat and said, "Let's write a love song"? Because it's still the same personnel.
I think maybe. I think that's up to the fans to decide if it's successful or not and if it works. And I think that in country music, fans, you know, as long as you're honest and it comes from your heart, your fans are going to accept it. You know, some of them might say, well, I never thought I'd hear him sing a love song, but other people that might say, okay, I kind of get it, you know. And again, it gets back to that change in perspective over 25 or 30 years. You know, life changes and your viewpoints change and everything. And your life experiences, you know, between 60 and 30, you've got a whole nother lifetime of experiences there. And I think that comes out in the writing and the music.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to share, sir? I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, sir, I think we're good.
I appreciate it.
Unless there's anything else you want, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it.
No, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Thank you.